I'd like to spend a few minutes and offer you some typical perspectives on systems thinking as part of the Certified Systems Thinker program. Now, systems thinking has essentially been around for 7 decades. Ludwig von Bertalanffy, who's considered by most to be the father of modern systems theory, sort of thought of systems as a worldview. And Peter Senge, in his 1990 The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization, referred to it as a discipline. Now, I haven't got a clue as to what to do with a worldview, but I do sort of have a sense of what it means to develop a discipline. And fortunately, this diagram provides a very nice perspective of things that one ought to figure out how to do on an ongoing basis to look at things with a systems perspective, sort of the habits of a systems thinker. And somebody once told me that they could use this diagram to explain what systems thinking was to their mother in a grocery store, which is quite a compliment for a diagram. So while these are good things to do, looking at the big picture and think about change over time and figure out how the effect of actions has an impact, it needs to be a bit more detailed in terms of how to go about that. And this diagram was actually derived from the Habits of a Systems Thinker developed by the Waters Foundation Systems Thinking in Schools project. And all of these pages are actually referenced down here at the bottom so that you know where to find them. The habits are very nicely developed in terms of, for each one of them, it tells you a little bit of background and the kinds of questions that you ought to ask. And they're really amazing perspectives and very, very useful, though very difficult to remember. And I guess they thought the same thing, because last year they came out with an app for both iPhones and Android, which, having the app on your phone, you can go through and review what are the appropriate habits to put into play when you're looking at something, and they have a number of interactive environments that help you remember and figure out how to look at things. And for, I think it was $2.99 or something, it's an app that if you're looking at things from a systems perspective, it's really worth the $3. So all well and good, it's still a lot to remember. And then in continuing to study, additionally for that, they also developed a rubric that provides a basis for going through and evaluating the extent to which one has developed a particular habit in terms of, for the big picture dimension, is the capability at a novice, basic, proficient, or advanced level. And it's a marvelous piece of work. Hopefully they will extend it for the rest of the habits. Though, as I said, it's still an enormous amount to remember. And in continuing to study systems thinking, it was realized that there are unbelievable number of models and methods that claim to embrace the systems perspective. And I was always concerned about, or confused about, why did we need hundreds of different approaches for figuring out how to understand and deal with systems. And fortunately, I came across Michael C. Jackson's systems thinking book that he wrote. And in that book, he put forth a model where he talked about systems in 2 categories: the well-defined, stable, not too complex systems that you could imagine that you could design and develop, and then complex systems that are sort of beyond our capacity to actually design and develop them. They sort of grow over time, though with the right approach, we might be able to understand them to some extent. Additionally, the other dimension is to look at the participants that are engaged in interacting as to whether they're unitary, pluralist, or coercive. Unitary meaning that the the participants have essentially the same goals and objectives and are aligned in what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Pluralist, in terms of the individuals involved, don't actually have the same goals and objectives all the time, but they can, in certain instances, line up and come to some sort of an agreement over how to proceed to deal with the situation. And then coercive, where the participants involved are pretty much unlikely to ever agree on anything. And within this matrix, he defined several different types of systems thinking, and within each one of those, there are a number of disciplines which are appropriate for that particular context. And this made an enormous amount of sense in terms of helping me understand why it was that we had all of these different approaches to trying to figure out how to deal with systems, so that if I'm in a situation where I have a complex system and a pluralist set of participants, trying to use hard systems thinking is a waste of time before I actually engage with that group in a way that allows us to figure out what it is that we're actually trying to address. And then we could do some of these kinds of things. So this perspective, this model, gave me a really good understanding of what all this stuff was about, though it still ends up being overwhelming in terms of numerous models and methods, and who can learn all this stuff. So after an enormous amount of time and a lot of headaches, I sort of figured out how to distill all of this down into an approach that one can learn in a very, very short period of time, probably an hour, and accomplish what one accomplishes with the habits and what one sorts out with a multitude of these methods to a certain extent. And I built that into this Certified Systems Thinker program, which walks through and sort of provides a basis for understanding relationships. Now, it's a program for understanding relationships from a qualitative perspective. One can learn a lot from developing relationship models, qualitative models, though when you get to a point of beginning to ask the kinds of questions such as when, how much, the only way that you're going to get closer to the understanding you're looking for is to develop dynamic simulation models. And this is not a program about those kinds of models. It's about developing qualitative models from which we can learn a lot. And the program is set up so that one can walk through this program using Insight Maker or Kumu, depending upon which one you prefer. And it will provide a basis for actually figuring out how to understand the relationships that are in play and an approach to figuring out how to deal with them. So look forward to seeing you in the program and another video soon. Bye.